Okay. Good morning, everyone. Before I start, I want to know, am I loud and clear? Am I audible? Anyone can please tell me?
Yes, you are.
Yes,
Thank
you are.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Yes,
So,
Ekta, you are.
thank you. So, a very good morning to everyone. Myself, Ekta Dubey, and on behalf of the Brinalytics team, we welcome you all and thank you for being part of our webinar, Reimagining AI in L&D. So before we start the webinar, there are a few guidelines that I would like to highlight and make you people aware of. Requesting all the attendees to be on mute when the speakers are taking the session. There would be a Q&A after each session where the attendees can ask the questions, if any, to their respective speakers. And the guidelines are, you need to raise your hands, unmute yourself on your video, introduce yourself, your name, company, and your job role, and ask a question to the respective speakers. So before we begin with our keynote session today, I would like to introduce in few words about our webinar today. So we all have witnessed that the fourth industrial revolution has automation and connectivity at its core. Given the fast pace of technological and social changes, L&D has to stay abreast of the latest approaches and methodologies as they develop their learning strategies. COVID-19 has definitely changed the way people learn and work across the world. And employees indeed play a crucial and a critical role in driving organizational growth. And in this time of disruption, the top priority for the HR and L&D heads and their businesses is their people. The webinar, Reimagining AI in L&D, will focus on how artificial intelligence will transform L&D and employee training. Our speakers will share interesting insights on discovering the potential and the exciting future of learning and development through AI. Now, to start with our keynote session, I would like to welcome Mr. Atul Suri. To speak about him, Mr. Atul is a strategic business unit head leading 6 business divisions across 4 therapy areas at Alembic Pharmaceuticals Limited. Having served in an Indian army for over 25 years before joining the corporate world, in his corporate stint till now, he has been closely associated with strategic HR initiatives, leadership and organizational development, talent management, and corporate communications before assuming a leadership role in sales and marketing. Atul is a motivational speaker and a profound thought leader. He very often shares his experiences and perspective during talks on leadership strategy, executive presence, and human resource at seminars and leading business solutions. And he will be sharing his insight. Future of L&D is all about people and technology. Requesting all the audiences to be on mute, please. Yes, Mr. Atul.
Yeah.
Over to you to start your session, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ekta. And indeed, we'll start with the thanks, really, of course, to Brainalytics. It's a little bit of a tongue twister for me. But yes, thank you so much for having done me the honor of delivering a keynote. More so, one is passionately associated with L&D till today. And even more than that, when I see the panelists on today's panel, one is actually humbled to note who they are, what they're all about, and possibly even more than the audiences today, I'm more than eager to listen to them, to pick a thing or two from what they have to offer to us today. So, like you very correctly said in the build-up to the webinar today, what L&D is all about and what AI has to really contribute there. And of course, like you indicated, I need to speak in my keynote on people and technology. So I'll do just that. I just want to ask you all here, which is the operative word in people and technology? If we can have this a little interactive, yes, you can just switch on your. I hope I can do that, Ekta, or you want this to be a unidirectional pontification from my side?
The way you want it, it's
yeah.
yours.
So I love to play with the audience, so we'll keep it slightly interactive. So, which is the operative word that you all see in people and technology? The topic that Ekta has so decided I should speak on. Anybody really, or we'll ask Ekta if nobody else is opening up. Yes, Ekta, what do you think?
So regarding this topic, it was asking
Yeah, no, which is the operative word in people and technology? Which do you think is the most operative word?
the most operative word in the sense today, if as a producer, I think the operative word today is the technology and the automation that has stepped
Okay,
in
so you
every
said
business
technology. So
processes. Yes.
the choice was limited to these three words of
Yes,
people and technology. And in my
exactly.
perspective, the most operative word is and. People by themselves are not, can't really achieve what you mandate them to achieve, nor can technology. So the most operative part of my topic today is the word and.
Okay.
Uh, and I mean, it's quite simple. It's all right there. So that is the most operative thing. And therefore, I shall be speaking on how they operate together. Let me just, and like you very correctly mentioned, I've served in the Indian Army for over about 26 odd years. Nothing odd about those years. Yes, 26 years with the Indian Army. And, contrary to popular belief, what people think, in the Indian Army, you're just one big Rambo running around trees and doing a Tarzan swing across a rope, across obstacles. It's not about that. There is so much of technology in the forces today. And the reason why the forces are so effective is because of the technology. Let me take your mind back to this movie Uri. I'm sure most of you would have seen it. It was all technology led. The men were leading, but the men were being led by technology. So it has to be an amalgamation of the two. And therefore, I say the operative word in today's topic is the word and. Which comes first, which comes later is not important, but is significant because one leads the other and the other leads the previous. And that's the way it works in a never ending loop. And therefore, in the circle of life, if we have to be effective in our organizations, it has to be this never ending circle and loop of people and technology, technology and people, and that's the way we go. So you've always heard about this man and machine. I mean, it's historic. Those magnificent men and their flying machines. I'm talking 30, 40 years back when that famous movie came in. It's always been man and machine, and typically it's always man before machine. But as we go further, we will realize that one complements the other so brilliantly well. So it's man and machine. Okay, let me give you a very current example. I'm sure exactly, in fact, it's 2 years, not to the date, but to the month. I'm talking of February 2019. You all remember this one good looking guy who had a mustache, something like that? And his name was something like Wing Commander Abhinandan. Now, you guys know what we're talking about. We're talking about a dogfight that took place high up in the air on the India and Pakistan border. I don't want to get political here, but I just want to sort of, drive home a message of man and machine, of people and technology. And I'll tell you, for those uninitiated or who don't have an in-depth knowledge into, aircraft technology and things, the Indian fighter pilot was in a MiG-21, a very vintage aircraft. But of course, it was a MiG-21 Bison upgraded. To say that it was not technologically equal to the opponent, who was in a Lockheed Martin F-16 fighter plane, which is credited to be extremely highly technology dependent, would be wrong. So, the popular gnostic thing is that, the Indian aircraft that brought the other one down wasn't as technologically advanced. It was fairly technologically advanced. It would be incorrect to say that that was a vintage of the 60s and this is a vintage of the 90s. No, I wouldn't say that. But the point I'm alluding to here is about the man. Of course, yes, the F-16 of the opponent was a far, far superior aircraft, but we are talking of the person indeed who was operating or piloting that particular aircraft. It is how he could leverage the technology that was with him to greater advantage, where despite almost getting knocked off himself, he was able to send out a missile to knock a similar or maybe slightly technologically advanced aircraft than his. And so, therefore, it is the man in the machine. It is the man that's running the technology. It is the man that needs to understand that technology to leverage it to the hilt. And therefore, the onus totally lies on the man. And over here, as L&D people, all of us sitting here, I've led the L&D function for my company about 4 or 5 years back. Uh, the onus is on us L&D professionals as CLOs or heads or whatever we call ourselves to ensure the absorption. So it's not about telling him what the technology is, A, B, C, this is what you can get out of this technology. But as an L&D professional, it's not only sensitizing everybody in the company of what the technology is, but getting them to absorb it. So I think the most significant thing and the most significant role for an L&D professional is absorption of that technology in the workforce. They have to live that technology. It's only then that they can leverage it. A bright and right example is what I just told you all about the famous air dogfight in January 2019. Of course, Winko Abhinandan has got the Veer Chakra for that action, and rightly so. So that's the main point I have about absorption of technology. And as a keynote speaker, I'd like to emphasize this as L&D professionals. Let's all get into that absorption mode across the entire organization. It's only then that we can tell ourselves that, yes, we are doing our job correctly. Of course, I don't want to pontificate on the benefits of AI. And again, I think Ekta has brilliantly themed the entire webinar in the very first word. She said it's reimagining. It's not imagining, it's reimagining. And my sense here is very simple. Everybody on this call, and we have 47 people here, including one wise, not so wise man like me, are aware of what AI is or what AI can do. But the point is, we don't get about doing that in fair measure. And who can tell you better? I don't want to blow my trumpet, but who can tell you better than me? I was in the army, of course, and then my corporate stint, I was invited to lead the leadership development initiatives in Alembic Pharmaceuticals, which I did for a year. The L&D function rolled into me. I looked after HR, and then I moved into a business function. For the last 3 years, I've been handling six of our business divisions across the country. So the perspective I want to give you all here as L&D professionals is this. I was an L&D professional. I still am. I would assume so. As an L&D professional, I shifted into a business role. And then when I turned back and I looked at all the modules that I thought were amazing, I mean, could they be better than this? Out of the question, they couldn't be better. Could they be more effective than this? Oh, they couldn't be more effective than this. Could they be more engaging than this? Oh, no, it couldn't be more engaging than this. I've actually analyzed everything to bring about a module like this, and that's what I thought. And I went into the other side. I hopped across the fence to see what I had done from a business perspective. Not within the first 6 months, of course, maybe it took me a full year, year and a half to understand the business down to its tiniest of intricacies and the most complicated of intricacies. And I ended up laughing at myself. I was the same guy 1.5 years before that, patting myself on the back and say, woo, woo, wonderful programs, wonderful modules. I think I've done a great job. And I thought that, this sort of elevation or a change in role into a business, into a revenue generating profit center role was like a shabash on my back that, hey, you did a great job at L&D. But then I realized that no, there is a huge amount of gap, and that gap needs to be covered. And once you get that realization, that's when you actually will start contributing again. So therefore, hats off to Ekta to have said reimagining AI. We all know what it is. I mean, I don't want to pontificate. 50 people on this call, you all know exactly what the advantages are. So therefore, I have this to say. We have an amazing panel with us. I mean, I did tell you when I started off my keynote that I felt like such a small little guy when I saw the luminaries that were on the panel, of course, being moderated by Indrani Chowdhury, Microsoft. I mean, and a beautifully selected panel, right from software technology to insurance to retail to FMCG to BFSI. I think the entire range of corporate India has got captured, and the best of the best are there on the panel. So let me tell you a little experience. I used to attend a lot of these, in the good old days, which was just about a year back. Pre-COVID is what I'm talking about. I would love to get invited to speak or to attend at various seminars, the famous face-to-face ones, because I love meeting people. And, I also love the lovely lunches that are laid out at lovely five-star hotels. So I would enjoy that to the hilt. And so therefore, I would attend these programs with these extremely hi-fi, so to speak, panelists. And I would sit there and look at all of them and say, wow, they're from such lovely companies. They have such great budgets. There's so much that these guys can do. What can I do? And I'm sure 80% of these 52 people who are here on the call with me right now are also thinking, oh, we're going to hear such lovely stories from all of them. But my company doesn't have the budget. Nobody's going to listen to me. I'm an L&D guy. At the end of the day, if I'm not a CLO, the HR head is going to walk over me, or the promoter or the board is not going to get convinced. How can I do these things that these lovely people are talking about? No, there's so much that you can do. What you can definitely do by listening to these lovely people with great experiences, and hats off for them to share these experiences and perspectives with us, is to pick up a change in the mindset that you so correctly need. Very clearly, simply, bluntly, I'm saying this. There is a definite need of a mindset change with all of us, including me. It's not that एक दिन ये platform आएगा, एक दिन ये multi dynamic technology platform will emerge from nowhere, and I will sit on it, ride on it, and ensure L&D is the hero of the entire company. That's not going to happen. That's never going to happen. And I'm sure Indrani and her panel will also tell us that's not the way it happens. It happens by a change in mindset. What can I do? What is artificial intelligence? There's nothing artificial about it. It's all there. You've got data lying there, tons and tons and tons and tons of data. You need to decide what you want to pick up. See, I agree, bandwidth issues. There's only that much that an individual can do. So therefore, machines are doing it for us, computers are doing it for us. But if you are in a company, or if you're on your own, a freelancer like many of us are, get that system into your mind. It costs nothing. You don't have to wait for a multi-billion-dollar system that's backed on Salesforce or SAP or what have yous. If your company can't afford it, if you can't afford it, get that system into your mind. It's free of cost. It's absolutely free of cost. Do what you can do at your level to make it right. Gather that intelligence that's lying there. There's nothing artificial about it. Let me say that yet again, just to bang home the point. It's all lying there. You say, okay, this is what I want to do. Indrani has told me this. Manjeet Mohan has told me this. And okay, they're lucky to have great systems in place. I don't have it, so bloody what? Let me at least pick up a strand from there, a strand from there, a strand from there, and weave a fabric that is fantastic because you've created it yourself. And you have then leveraged this intelligence that lies across the entire company. And you can then proudly say, yes, I have something that's relevant. I have something that's customized. I have something that is actually personalized. I have created content that is extremely immersive in its manifestation. I have created genuine engagement. I have then created actual development for that individual. It is possible. It all lies here. It doesn't lie in the finances that the company has to give to you. And believe you me, once as L&D professionals, you walk that path, the board will automatically recognize what you're doing. And they will automatically pump in budgets to get you to do what you're doing because they realize the benefit that lies in a very systematic approach based on huge amount of analysis that you have done to bring a program or a module up to 4. So therefore, don't bother if all these ideas that have been thrown at you today seem to be, oh, not so doable. Maybe Microsoft can do it, but maybe I can't. That's not the way. So like I'm saying it for the third time, get those changes here. That's the only way we guys will move ahead as L&D professionals. Some companies are lucky to have CLOs. Some companies are not so fortunate. I would say those companies don't recognize the benefits if they don't have a CLO today. You have to have a CLO in place in a company that's growth centric, that's growth oriented, because growth can only come with development of the workforce. And today, of course, with the rapid disruption being caused by digital is amazing. One of my favorite lines is, and I think I read it in a comic book somewhere. It says technology has got the shelf life of a banana. I mean, can it be more true than that? My wife buys bananas for the children, plantains for the children to eat. And if it's lying on the table for more than one day, it gets bad. And of course, it gets converted into milkshake and gets to me on my breakfast table for me the next morning. So that's what I'm saying. Technology has got the shelf life of a banana. You've got to be adaptive. You've got to absorb it straight away to leverage it further. And that's the way you've got to move. See, the entire process, the famous, starting from TNI, TNA, content creation, and all that, that entire process we all understand. Remember, at every stage of that L&D process, you can bring in a systematic approach to working. And that's what intelligence gathering is. That's what populating data points for you so that you can come out with better outcomes is. So please remember that. I'm not too sure whether I've overstepped the time allotted to me, but straight from me, from my heart, from the experience that I've had in corporate as also in the forces, I know, and I know it for a very fair fact, backed by huge amount of personal experience and seeing outcomes myself, both adverse as also amazing, is this, that there has to be this fine amalgam between people and technology. And therefore, like I started, I will finish with the most operative word in the topic which was given to me to pontificate on is the word and. It's people and technology. Having said that, let me leave you to the amazing panel that's here today. And I'm more than excited. And I asked Ekta if I could attend the panel discussion, or am I expected to eject myself once I've delivered my keynote? She's, of course, given me permission to hang on. So I would love to listen to all of you before I would need to exit at about 12:20 for another 12:30 engagement. But I'm more than excited, like you all are, to listen from the panel. But I've been also told Ekta may open up my session for some sort of interaction or questions if there are. I'm more than happy to take any sort of questions based on my experience in L&D, in a business role, or in the forces, or if you want me to bring you correlations between my experience in the forces to how I've sort of leveraged it in corporate, I would be more than happy to take any question. And my experience usually is when we are in these webinars, there just might be only one question, but that's okay. But I speak a lot at a lot of these colleges and universities. Very interesting. There, the kind of questions that come to you are amazing. But having pegged my expectations not so high, I open up for any questions. Ekta, can we do that?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Atul. I must say it was a session full of energy, lovely insights coming in from your end, considering your army background. So definitely everybody liked it. So participants and our audiences, we are open for the Q&A. I would request you all to please start with your Q&A. I have shared the guidelines that you need to raise your hands, unmute yourself, and requesting you to on your video also, so that Mr. Atul can understand who is talking. So it's good to have you on the video as well. So please, we can start with the Q&A for Atul sir.
Ekta, may I go ahead?
Yes, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Javed.
Javed.
Yeah. Hi, Atulji. It's nice insight, and I think you have a great experience from your, army days and with your stint at the L&D and the business. So, I have been into L&D for quite a good number of years. One question is always there. See, all our CXOs see from the business and the return on investment, and they start from the other end of the axis. And we start from the other end where we say, these many people are trained, these many program delivered, this is my feedback. And by the time we reach performance, improvement, we die. So, most of the Indian organization, reach to that level 3, they die. But a level 5 is what is return on investment. Like Jack Flip has, done that research. So have you ever experienced return on investment with your learning intervention?
Yeah,
and have you presented any such outcome to the higher ups?
So I can tell you, you've actually not just hit the nail on the head, but that nail happens to be the last nail on the coffin, because that's the biggest problem that most L&D professionals have. Two things: one is training effectiveness, and secondly is return on investment. Because the entire thing is so ambiguous. The point is, and I very openly tell the board often when I was heading L&D, is that there are 150 external factors that impact the performance of an employee, more so a sales employee, because Alembic is a hugely Salesforce driven organization. 99% of the people are in sales in our organization. So there are 150 things. The point here is, and what as L&D leaders and CLOs we need to sensitize the board on, is that you cannot, despite whatever artificial intelligence has to say, there is no simple formula that can tell you yes, this is the training effectiveness. It is one of the ingredients to success, a critical success factor undoubtedly, towards ensuring your outcomes as a business leader. I cannot claim that if I were to put a person through 6 modules over 6 different months or whatever it may be based on your program design, that this guy is going to become a superstar overnight. It is not possible. The board also realizes that, the promoters also realize that, and to that extent, they also realize that it is a vital ingredient. And for them to realize it's a vital ingredient for the success of the force or the workforce, the employees, is to get a buy-in from the board that the programs that you are doing are actually relevant and not just seem to be relevant. So, it's like I said, it's no formula ki ye program isne kiya hai, to fir this is going to be the impact, or the needle is going to shift so much. That just cannot be done. AI has various tools in place, but again, it's all just predictive. Anything predictive has enough scope for error. And so therefore, while I am a great proponent of huge amount of analysis leading to a predictive decision or a predictive display of what is possibly going to happen, but at the same time, it is no sure short way of saying that it is only because of your training program that this has happened. So I don't think anybody has a straight answer to that, apart from, yes, shaping the environment. And by shaping the environment, I mean by sensitizing the board or the promoter that this is a relevant input. And it actually works because when you take a body of people who have not been introduced, and I'm not just talking about Delta, कि पहले ये था उनका और फिर बाद में ये हो गया, because that's something, again, we all L&D professionals love pontificating on. He see his sales performance before he came to me and see his sales performance 2 months after he came to me. Well, there are 150 factors that have impacted that. Has the market changed? What has the market share indeed gone down, whereas this guy's done better? I mean, there are 100 things to it. So Javed, quite clearly, there is no answer to your question. The only thing is we need to keep our heads down, keep working, use all data points that are available to us to ensure the effectiveness of our training program, and convince them, the board, that yes, it is worth it. And like I'm telling you from my personal example, when I hopped across and I looked at the programs I designed for this very division that I was accountable for, I realized that what a miss it was. It wasn't a near miss. It was a total miss. So therefore, co-create your programs with the business is the only advice I have for you. Let the onus be on the business leader to finally approve what you have. Most of us think it's a great thing. We quote 30 different philosophers, get 10 different tools, wrap up a program which we think is interesting, thrust it down them. It doesn't work. So what worked in my case later was co-creation. I would sit with the L&D guy and say, boss, you get hold of my national sales manager, you get hold of my marketing head, you get hold of my commercial excellence person, and the three of you, you give me a program. You don't take total onus of rolling it out, but co-create it with everybody. The onus is shared, the buy-in exists, the rollout will be effective, the outcomes will be arrived at. That's the only advice I have. The last 3-4 sentences that I said, co-creation is the only way that you can succeed.
Thanks, Atulji. Thanks. Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you so
Javed.
much.
Yeah, Ekta, anything else? Or was it that the
Yeah,
famous
so
one question that comes up in a webinar?
So do we can take one more question, not a problem.
Okay.
So yes, if anyone has any questions, please put it to Mr. Atul. You can raise your hands and I can take your name.
Yeah, so I think, yeah. So let's not run out on time. Everybody likes their Saturday afternoon. So yeah, thank you so much, Ekta, for having me, and I enjoyed the delivery as also the interaction I did have with Javed, and I'm now looking forward to what Indrani is going to take us through.
Great.
Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you so much, Atul sir, for your
And
energy
Ram,
full of session, and it was great having you.
thank
So
you.
quickly, not wasting my much further time, I would like to move to a session panel discussion where we speak about exploring the new paradigms of learning, leveraging the best of technology on L&D. Now, I would like to invite a moderator, Indrani Chaudhary, Chief Learning Officer of Microsoft India, with over 2 decades of experience across different functions, including PNL management, sales and marketing, product and program management, channel marketing. In Microsoft, she has been part of the core team driving cloud enablement and transformation across ecosystem. Over to you, Indrani, to start with the panel with introducing all the panel speakers. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Am I audible loud and clear? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Ekta, and thanks, Brain Analytics. Oh, again, somebody said it's a tongue twister, but thank you so much for hosting this event. And Mr. Atul, your session is unbeaten. Actually, it's like so nice, so engaging. And whatever you said, I'm going to be just carrying the baton because you talked about the operative word and people and technology. So we'll continue with that baton. And certainly, there are some insights that we will double click on when we are in the session, like how can you do more with less? Because not every company will have CLOs, not every company will have the budgets, but then technology is something that we are trying to democratize. It actually saves money in the long run. There are companies that actually invest to democratize the learning. One can easily use that and, go ahead. So without much ado, so I wanted to really, first and foremost, let me be very candid. This is my first experience as a moderator. I have never been a moderator, but when Ekta introduced me to all the panel members, I really got excited like you did. I said, oh, wow, I'll also learn because I am also responsible for skilling our customers. And here are dignitaries who are like doing so much, and I would really learn. So I'm taking my bet, like Mr. Atul just said, that it's all in the mind that you haven't done this. I am just jumping in. Maybe I don't do a good job, but I'm sure my panel members would help me in making sure this few hours or few minutes that we spend is a treat for everybody. Everybody can take one key takeaway and implement that. Let's start slowly. And at the end of the session, I guess we are a small fraternity, L&D. We should stay connected through LinkedIn or any other community that you think, but we should stay connected. So before I introduce to the panel members, I'll speak a little bit more about myself, a little, not too much. But as Ekta already introduced, I'm the Chief Learning Officer of Microsoft, but I don't only look at my employee training. I also look at making sure that I can do cloud enablement for technology skilling for our customers, our partners, our ecosystems. So Microsoft's mission is actually to empower every organization and person on the planet to achieve more. And so we are doing this by actually looking at the and quotient, which is technology that is helping us drive this mission. And over the last couple of years, if you are following news on learning, etc., there is a term which is called the tech intensity. And tech intensity is something, if I correlate to what Mr. Atul just said, it's about how do you adopt to the technology. So it's about creating that skill intensity to make sure that you can adopt, embrace technology, because the more you play with technology, the more you use technology, the more you will find the features which can be extended. So so that's why I'm here, and I am joined by very esteemed industry leaders in the L&D domain. So let me do justice in trying to introduce them one by one. So I'll start, not in any sequence, I'll just start. Everybody is equally important, but I'll start with Mr. Javed Ansari. He's the Deputy Vice President of L&D Kotak, and Javed has over 2 decades of experience in content development and training, uh, and in reputed, and I hope I'm looking at the same one sec, sorry. Yeah, prior to his current role of heading the learning programs and capability development at Kotak, he was part of L&D team at HDFC Life, and also has content development experience at Lionbridge Technologies. His interest in interactive and engaging program development, game-based learning, animation films, and evaluation of learning programs is what makes him an ideal panelist to discuss how technology can aid L&D. So the people and technology. Welcome, Javed. The next one is in the panel member that I have is Megha Jain. And she heads the learning and development of United Breweries. So Megha Jain has about 14 years of, or rather more than 14 years of experience of working in different geographies and industries. Her passion towards impacting lives through learning experience makes her a successful business HR growth enabler. She has more than a decade of international experience in talent management and organizational development, working across organizations like Schindler, Kohler, and Max Life Insurance. She's instrumental in designing and deploying innovative learning solutions powered by technology and positively impacts the bottom line. So your ROI questions perhaps will be best answered by Megha. The third member in the panel is Manjeet Mohan. He's the group head, learning and development of IIFL. He has more than 18 years of experience in business and L&D function in the BFSI segment. He has worked in reputed organizations, all of which are known to us. It's a household name, ICICI, Kotak Mahindra Bank, and he's currently leading the group learning function of India Infoline, which is IIFL. He's a digital learning enthusiast and is a firm believer that learning is effective only if driven by learner curiosity and not because of an organization mandate or because we are measuring KPIs. And this is the motivating factor for him to implement some cutting edge technology which enables learning practices, which leverages LXPs, workplace integration, chatbots, AI. So I am more than interested in hearing him out, asking questions so that I can take some learning for my own self. And last but not the least, Swapnil Kothari, he's the head of learning development, Reliance Jewels. And he has been a SME in the retail industry for over 15 years, providing valuable contributions in domains of retail operations, sales, projects, learning and development. He's been working in north, south, east, west across 12 cities, and he has excellent understanding of the various geographies, demographies, culture, consumer psyche. So we're going to really leverage and get deeper insights from him. He has worked in various sectors of retail and carries with him loads and loads of understanding and knowledge of OD, talent management, and has also expertise in developing business and L&D strategy. So with that as an introduction, let's do honors because we had such a great, interesting opening, and we'll continue with that same enthusiasm and get into our questions. So the first one, again, dovetailing from where Mr. Atul left, let's talk about, and this question is actually across each one of you. So we'll go one by one in the order that I introduced all of you. The question is for everybody, but let's make it unique by contextualizing this question to your organization, right? So that we all learn and say, hey, this is done in retail. Can I extend it in this vertical, right? So question is, how are you witnessing the transformation and technology adoption within L&D function post-pandemic versus pre-pandemic? So how is it working for you? So can we start with you, Mr. Javed?
Sure. So thanks, Indrani, for inviting my views on this. Well, technology was very much present. It's not that it wasn't present before pandemic, only it was taking its own, pace. As in every organization has its own, way of working, way of doing things. So L&D function also was expected to adopt post-pandemic 100%. Everybody wanted overnight things to change, and L&D is no different in that. So in no time we wanted to transform. So the first few months, like in April, May, we wanted all our sales training to transform into adopting technology. So the first challenge as an organization at Kotak Life we face is the adoption of the tools were available, although people were, those who are comfortable or tech savvy at that moment, at that point of time, they were using it, but it was, not 100%, obviously. So the first challenge was not only, making our customer adopting the technology, but our salesperson also need to adopt the technology. being into sales, training, our salespersons, all these years they are selling insurance face to face, because it's all about relationship, it's all about emotions in life insurance. So now the first challenge for them to adopt the technology, like start selling through video based, selling, is the first, step that we need to take. The first thing what we did was to make them enable through our training programs. And like in insurance, you have steps, like you meet, then you analyze the need, then you do some objection handling like in any sales process, and then you do closing and referral and stuff like that. So at each stage as an organization we have different digital app or digital way of doing things. Like you do a video call opening. Now all these years they were doing face to face. Now suddenly even the customers should, or prospective customers should also be ready to take that call through Zoom or through video call, on WhatsApp call. All this self was a challenge. So all this we enable them through training program changes. And each step was like, analysis where we have a smart cell app, which enables the salesperson to, do need analysis and, share the presentation of sales. So all these things we enabled through our training program. And then there is a entire sales process, Genie app, which we have again adopted in our training programs. So all these changes were done like the first stage of our, post pandemic, and which actually worked, and people have, adopted. Of course, there was no choice for them, but this is how the entire transformation and the technology adoption happened in the product life.
Thank you so much, Mr. Javed. Megha, would you want to go next?
Yes, thank you so much, Indrani, for this question. I would say digital transformation for us in L&D was not, and the technology, I would say, the way we have adopted it was not only about increasing our investment or just adopting the technology. Like, Mr. Atul Suri also mentioned, it was about absorption of technology. So for us, it was more about creating a cultural mindset and build that culture of continuous learning in the organization. So for us as an organization, the digital learning journey started much before the pandemic. It's been 3 years now that we are on a digital learning journey, and we started this with our online e-learning platform, which is AI enabled, which pushes the content to learners based on their interest, on how they are browsing, and all of that. Idea was how we leverage this further. So post pandemic, the biggest challenge for us was how do we continue our learning as it is. So we looked at our strategy more from a macro and micro perspective. While there is one way which is happening in large cohorts, and then there is another aspect which happens through individual learning throughout the organization through our intelligent learning platform. So the biggest challenge for us was how do we move the learning which is happening right now in large cohorts in the form of development centers, in the form of individual learning plans, in the form of action learning projects. So there is a very comprehensive development journey that we have in place, which was happening in person. So the challenge was how do we now move this online? So, post pandemic, what we did is we invested further in the technology by designing and deploying the entire development journey online. So, all the focused and targeted interventions we moved online. So, the entire virtual development journey is now happening online. And also, we realize that it is a more evolved approach for us in a way that we could bring all the people together through technology, create a sense of competition, create a sense of reminders, giving them reminders, tracking their progress. It was much effective for us in terms of our initiative. So I would say it was blessing in disguise for us because the disruption happened much before, and there was a lot of learning out of it. One thing I would, of course, want to say is that as an organization, it is very important to understand the context while you adopt the technology. What is that you want to use, how you want to use it, customizing. There are a lot of learning platforms available now. What is that you need? What is your organization context? And also how can we make it simpler and easier at the same time aligned to the real needs of the participants? That was very essential for us. So this way, I would say we relooked at both our macro and micro strategy, and we are leveraging in both the areas in terms of driving it organization wide, and also a more focused intervention that we have now as a part of a learning journey. So I would say that post COVID, the different triggers which happened to us, we could still continue with the learning journey because the foundation was very, very strong for us.
Sure.
So that's how the transformation has happened for us.
Hey, thank you so much. And I guess through all both the examples, it's people and technology, and how technology is empowering the person to be more effective or employee to be more effective. So we move next in the line, Manjeet.
Thanks, Indrani. And let me begin by resonating with Atul because having heard him, it was like reliving the experience that I had been through. So, having been a person who started my career in HR, then moved to business, and now back to L&D. So he did some very candid revelations, which really resonates, and that's the reality today. Wherein it's not just people, and people think that with technology coming in, people are going to lose their jobs. What is going to happen? Our process is going to change. How would you really bring in simulations and synergies between people and technology? Which he beautifully brought in. And the second thing is, like rightly he said, he go on and do this process of content creation along with business. That's very, very important. And I think that's your first step to really looking at generating an ROI driven business or learning intervention. Having said that, like Megha in UB, I think for IFL, we had in fact started the digital learning journey quite early, and I would say almost 4.5 years back. And COVID was actually a blessing in disguise for us from a learning perspective, and I'm sure the majority of the organizations, HR and learning functions were the most busiest functions during this COVID period, trying to really either bring in new processes or bring in new adaptations, or might be really looking at how do you really leverage the time that you had with people and employees to really utilize the time more efficiently from a learning perspective. Uh, so I think for us, like I said, since we are already digitally adopted from a learning perspective, some of those processes that we used to follow really helped us in the pandemic. For example, we used to have this process of pre-onboarding, wherein we would reach out to the candidate right after the issuance of an offer letter and start engaging from a learning perspective through our digital platforms. And this really helped us during this pandemic because many people who got their offers from organizations were really confused whether they would really retract from taking their offers back. Are they really going to have a specific joining period and all of it? But this process of really engaging and leveraging technology to reach out to them right at the pre-onboarding stage, and that too typical waiting period when they are actually in their notice periods and eagerly waiting to join an organization, helped us to give them a comfort level, saying that, hey, you are still being looked at. It's not that we are going to really say that you will not be hired. And more the engagement that you see really gave them that confidence, saying that, yes, the organization is really looking at us. And if not today, tomorrow, we are going to be soon on board. So that's something which really technology helped us, and some of these processes that we had earlier, which we in fact brought in to really understand and measure learner engagement or the employee engagement. Typically, what happens is, especially we are also a frontline heavy organization, a sales heavy organization, and typically what happens is you release offers, and then during your date of joining, you really see around 30 to 40% no shows. So that's really when we really looked at engaging with this audience at the pre-onboarding stage to really understand, saying that if the employee is really engaging with us, more likely that the person will join us for sure. And that really had some data inputs and data science to really back us there. The second thing which really helped us is, for me, when I look at technology, when I look at employees, when I look at all of it, there are two major things that come to my mind. One is content and the relevance of content to context. That's very, very important. That is, are you able to provide the right set of content to the right set of learners at the right point in time? That's one. Second, when I'm looking at technology requires data. And like rightly Atul said, you require huge and a lot of data for really technology to give you or bring life the power of technology. And especially when you're talking about artificial intelligence, it is backed by data and the power of data. The more data you are able to amass and really give it to the machine, it will really throw beautiful insights that you can really work on. So during the pandemic, our efforts were clearly focused on these two things. One is identify the content which resonates with the user. Second, build or give the machine more data. And how do you generate data? It's purely through learner engagement. So the more the learner engages with your content, the more the learner engages with your learning experience platforms, you are actually creating a huge repository of data at the back end. And the more and sooner you are able to create those huge data repositories, it will really help your AI machines to generate more relevant and more hard-coded outputs that you can really leverage and look at. So the entire period of pandemic, I think we tried and reached out. We were trying to reach out to the maximum set of audience to the level of we in fact have around 80 to 85 plus engagement levels on a month-on-month basis, wherein we constantly were looking at learner engagement as the prime focus, with an objective to really bring in content or identify content that resonates well with different types of employees, different audiences that we have, and also to help generate the usage data, which we could really leverage, or the machine could really leverage and then throw back as some critical information, which we could then structure learning paths and learning journeys around.
Awesome, Majid. We'll want to hear more about it, and there will be more questions that I will ask over the course of time. But it's really insightful, and I think I again echo what you are saying as well as Mr. Atul said. It is very, very, very important to know what the business wants, what the learner wants, and therefore, if we are only in the L&D function, we may not have that 360-degree view. In fact, the core requirement to, as a CLO was to be in the sales, to know the business all 360 degrees. And I have played multiple roles, and therefore understanding what a customer wants, what our employees would have, co-creating it with the business leaders is what is very, very insightful, because data AI will give you results, will give you reports, but how do you analyze it? How do you work on it? Business insights always helps. With that, Mr. Swapnil, if you could just give your comments on this question, please.
Yeah, thanks, Indrani. And firstly, thank you, Ekta. Very good afternoon to all of you witnessing this wonderful August gathering, I would say. I think there's an abundance of knowledge that has been shared, and there's very little left for me. But yeah, I mean, if I have to just share, some thoughts around the journey that has happened in the digital transformation around L&D. So I would say, the question really is whether or how am I witnessing the transformation and technology adoption in L&D. I would honestly say I haven't witnessed it, because I was too busy driving it. Yeah, and especially when you're working like an organization like, the one that I'm currently working with, which is probably the largest organization in Asia as of date, and the kind of manpower count that you're looking at, you really have very little time to witness as an audience. But what we, actually sustained and thrived at was, as many of them like Megha and Manjeet and Javed already said, that technology was adopted, about 3-4 years back itself. The same was the case with us. But if you look at the panel discussion topic today, which is reimagining AI, that's the critical word here, as pointed out by Mr. Surya as well earlier. So before the pandemic hit, we were imagining AI. And when the pandemic hit, we actually reimagined AI. And from an L&D context, just one case study that I can share with you. We went on work from home somewhere in March, and everything was shut down, and people were clueless. And for the L&D heads, in the entire business of Reliance, we were given about a month's time to come out with a strategy and a plan for the entire organization, which is not just for the 1 year or 18 months till the vaccine comes, but which will continue for the next years to come. And we drafted that in bang on in 45 days. One of the key transitions that we realized we had to make was not just to get in more technology and more innovation into L&D, but importantly also educate and train people on how to use technology. Because if you look at retail as an industry in India, and you look at even if you're talking of organized retail, 80% of your manpower is semi-skilled, right? And they are people who do not come with a lot of educational background, especially people working at the retail stores and outlets. And the number of people that we were looking at was humongous. So that was one challenge where I came up with a so-called theory. It's you can always play around with words on that, but I said that why can't we guide technology to guide us better? Yeah. And that's where we actually leveraged technology. We used technology to educate people about technology, and that was the game changer for us. uh, Obviously, there were a lot of people who were under a lot of fears, fear of pay cuts, fear of losing jobs, and fear of underperformances, tremendous pressure on the sales and the operations functions. uh, so culture and employee engagement went hand in hand, along with upskilling and building capabilities for people. I would, and I often speak at various discussions like the one I am in today. uh, I've been telling people, and I think I will continue telling people, that in the history of corporate, 2020 will be known as the year of L&D, because the amount of work that L&D and HR definitely has put in is kind of unparalleled. And it's kind of, though it's set a benchmark for us now going forward. But yeah, I think organizations have become more open to invest into L&D, and especially technology-led L&D. We're talking of AI, something like a chatbot, which is probably a passe now. And we are talking more for a voice bot. You look at your domestic environment at your home. Almost everyone has an Alexa or a Siri now, and you just tell them what you want and they'll give it to you. So I think we as a group have started moving on towards that stage where it will be demand driven trainings or learnings, as to say, and it will be more on a self-paced journey that people will take up.
So thanks, Swapnil. Actually, simply put, we are a technology company, and much like 4 or 5 years or perhaps earlier, I was into this cloud transformation, the core group, which was enabling our partners, customers to get into the cloud journey. But as Satya also says in all his reports, so many months, 12 months or 2 years of digital transformation, the value, etc. It just took 2 months to actually implement and accelerate the pace. So yeah, I would say that as many of you also resonated, it is pandemic that helped us accelerate and reimagine, as you said, Swapnil, reimagine AI, because people were imagining technology. So we are reimagining it now. So with that, I go to the next question, and perhaps also taking the cue from Megha or Manjeet about the fact that we already had digital transformation, digital learning in our organizations. But however, there were some components of the training that required that human touch, right? I mean, maybe because of mindset or whatever, we thought that it cannot do without a word classroom. And more so, Javed, I heard you about your Salesforce. They needed that human touch more. So now with the situation changing, with you working, with everybody working from home and classroom wasn't the option, how are you adjusting to the new normal of everything digital? and using technology to ensure that we don't lose out on the efficacy of the program for the end audience. So
Thanks.
Javed, if you, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks again, Indrani, for seeking my response on digital content precisely you're referring to, and also impacting on the classroom programs. As a life insurance organization, we, in all these years, in fact, barring the last couple of years, we are 100% doing classrooms. So we have, an army of trainers across the nation. Every, major city, our trainer is there. So you can understand the amount of, workforce we have to train. Like we have 1 lakh plus advisors and 8,000 plus employees. So we have trainer across India, and we were day in, day out, we were doing classes. So just imagine, this one, change, actually how entire, landscape of the L&D in the organization has changed. Although we were in blend, started to blend in last couple of years, and we started, we can say close to 20% has gone in our learning experience platform, but still we were, majorly on the classroom. So the first challenge we faced was the how this classroom program or the content will directly fit in a virtual class, because in a classroom you have people present in your class where, you can directly deliver whatever you want to convey that message. But this was the first change that we need to bring in. Now you are not meeting your client, or you meeting your prospective customer face to face. You will be meeting through video meet, or through, some video call or Zoom call. So you will be meeting them through that. How are you going to, do this? The first change we brought in all our programs, how do you use those video calling apps to make that meeting happen, and it should look like is a personal touch, or, with that video camera on, and, because a lot of people were not comfortable prior to pandemic. So this was the first change. But then we found out that this is not the only change that we need to bring in, because all these years they were doing a lot of activities to make this learning transfer happen, because there were activities like group activities or individual activities in the classroom. Now the next change that we need to bring in all our program is to change all those classroom activities and into a virtual class activity. And this was a major, differentiator in the, learning program that we have made. So like activities is something like, conducting a poll, for example, then having some, terminology in the on the screen and asking them the description about it, or true and false in the chat box, or seeking the response in the chat box. All this was not a very common thing before pandemic. So all our trainers also need to, incorporate this new ideas, new way of conducting training, and also like breakout areas in you have in Zoom, where you can actually conduct the way you're conducting in classroom group activities. So all those things we need to do. But once you've done this, now your facilitator trainer also need to be prepared to do this, because just by making these two changes will not help. So we have conducted train the trainer across all the, entire hierarchy, and made them understand how you can facilitate these activities so that there is a good engagement. So all of us understand, like we are conducting this Zoom, a lot of people are not on camera, and you don't know in classroom, virtual class also, the challenge is whether my participant is actually listening to me, is actually doing, is actually learning, is remains a question mark. So that is where the engagement activities like conducting a poll, and, asking them some question, and getting them into breakout area, and conducting group activities was so these are few enablers for facilitator to make sure that there is a good engagement with the participant, although you are not physically present, with them. So this was, required, because just by knowing these, apps and all those things will not help. They have to learn and go and apply. So, and another thing what we have done, we have made all our simulations of app for their just-in-time learning. We made it available through our learning apps, and also from their sales enablement app also, so that whenever they are going for a client call or a prospective customer call, they can just see that, and then they can go and prepare themselves. And this was not the only one, because our larger force of the like agents, we also have other distribution channels. So we have to cater to like direct sales channels, or those who are selling through banks also. So we have to tweak the content and tweak the program to suit their needs also, or these channels needs. So first couple of months we could achieve the entire transformation of these learning programs and the content, so that it works out well. But this is not the only way. Once you have delivered it, now the another challenge was to remain engaged with the learner, because earlier we used to call them every week or every month in the classroom, for refreshers and stuff like that. Now with pandemic, you can't have that physical again. So what we have done, we started micro learning, or the bite-size learning, what we call. And these are nothing but we started learning nuggets. These learning nuggets are like nothing but 2-3 minutes video or an animation with semi-realistic characters, in a conversation, and just focusing on one single message, not too many things, just one single message. What is taxation, for example? Just talk about that, how ATC helps you. That's it. So this is also another, quick learning, and also making sure that there is a good retention, because I have handy with my smartphone. I can store that animation, or I can refer this video and animation any point of time. And all this to come, become a very good enabler. As Swapnil said, ki L&D was, on the forefront. 2020 was a year of L&D, and he is right in saying that, because all this we applied for an internal award for digital adoption, best team for digital adoption by MD's Excellence Award, and we won. So that was the achievement of the L&D team, as done in the 2020. And the pandemic is actually, recently I read this MCQ question where it said who led the digital transformation, whether it's CEO, CTO, or COVID. And that's on the on a lighter note, it's actually COVID which has actually made this happen. So this all made things in shape, and of course we are still in the journey. It's not the end. We are still in transit mode. We are doing a lot of things. So lastly, we have actually collaborated with the HR team, and with the HR team, we all these years, we are doing something like a track or a syllabus to deliver for this training program. But we found out that some people may be good at XYZ, some skill, and some people are good at XY, ABC, for example. So we have to do some sort of skill gap analysis, and AI or the technology will help in this area, where we can identify for performing a suppose a manager analytics. Requires to have 5 skills, and with the evaluation, if we found out there are 3 skills the person already has, the other 2 skills he needs to acquire, either to grow vertically or horizontally, or change in his role or her role. But what are those? How do I acquire those 2 skills? So this is the skill gap analysis or skill gap matrix across the organization for the major role can be prepared. And so we started this. This is one of the initiative, and where the will help us to recommend to acquire those 2 skills for you to get a promotion or get an incentive or get a great change, or can be possible, and you can grow in the organization, and it will be very much self-determined. So in this quarter, if you do this, or in this year, if you do this, you will get to the next level. So this is very relevant and motivating for any employee. If you do this kind of intervention, which will recommend exactly where you need to improve, or where you need to what you need to acquire as a skill and knowledge. And this is how the things are moving in our organization. And I would suggest all of us, those who are in this today's conference and call, my one suggestion to all of you, I think Mr. Atul and a lot of panelists also have spoken about, the senior management buy-in and budget are 2 very relevant things. To make this happen, we should start from top. Like while I was interacting with my business head here in my organization, so they said it has to start from the top. If my senior manager or a VP or a head business head is adopting that technology or adopting that way of doing learning, this is definitely will percolate down to the bottom. If we start from the front line and go higher up, the possibility and the probability is less that adoption will actually reach to the level that we are intended to do. But if we start from top to bottom, I suggest everyone to start from there. And of course, we have to collaborate and co-create, which is very, very important. If we inbuild what is relevant, because it should not happen ki your content says very hypothetical or a theoretical thing, which is nothing to do with, like a lot of trainers, people take them as if he doesn't have even done a single sale, now he's telling me how to do it. So that kind of mindset people will come. But if I give them a relevant case study or a relevant you know best practice, that will help. So that is where the co-creation with data, with case study and best practices and buying from the senior management will definitely drive the technology, will definitely drive the any learning intervention. And of course, finally, the bottom line is the budget will not be a challenge, because once they bought in, they will not question you, because they will see impact, they will see results.
Thank you,
So
Javed.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your insights. And I'm sure, we've kind of resonated what Mr. Atul started with, and we are continuing that. So there are, solid key takeaways that are emerging out of this. So the next question that I have is for Megha. If you have to apply design principles and keeping the employee at the center, what are the challenges that your employees are currently encountering to stay relevant and skilled, and how is technology empowering you leaders to be more empathetic towards the learners, because the situation of learning is not the same as the previous one. We have so much of you know people having to balance their work while working remotely. So how are you looking at leveraging technology?
Yes, so thank you, Indrani, for this question. Well, I would say there are a lot of challenges, but just to pick up few, which we are addressing through technology. The first one, of course, I would say is for employees to how do they address some of the complex business issues which in the business. So whether it for our business, one of the complex issue is water conservation. So similarly, for salespeople, how to drive net sales revenue, how to identify different cost levers. So for every function, there are different complex issues. So how do we enable our people to solve some of the complex business issues is one area that we address. Second, of course, is how to build the functional expertise of people at middle and junior level. Uh, Third, I would say, how do we enable employees to navigate through some of the behavioral issues that they are facing? Four, of course, which is of course industry wide, is mental health and well-being of employees. And then another one I would say is how do we use and leverage data and make some meaningful analysis out of it. So these are some of the complex business issues. These are some of the areas and challenges that our employees are encountering. To coming to the how do we address on these challenges? First, I would like to start with the business challenges, how we are addressing that. So, as a part of our learning intervention, which I also talked about, that there is one learning intervention which is happening in large cohorts, wherein we identify critical job families in different functions, and then we develop them for the next level. So, how we have integrated these challenges to enable them is so as a part of our development journey, we have action learning projects. So each participant after the classroom workshop has to pick up a business impact project. So this business impact project is in line with the manager, is discussed with the manager. And then what we do is we track the entire project online. So what are the key deliverables of this project? How this project is going to benefit the business? How it is going to impact? So this is where we also show how the learning intervention has shown an impact on the bottom line. So this is one aspect, and we have seen the first group has done tremendously well in terms of working on business impact projects. What we do from an organization side is we also sign a coach to them, which is external. We are now also looking at building internal capability of coaches to enable our employees on solving these complex issues. And also there is an internal mentor which is identified from the senior leadership team. So we have a senior leadership buy-in also. And also we use the technology platform to then show the progress on how employees are progressing on the projects. So there are different phase-wise plan that we prepare, and that's how we show the progress. And at the end of the learning journey, they have to also prepare and present the project and its impact to the top management. So this is one area. And second, of course, is functional. How do we build the functional expertise? So we have already set the foundation by working on functional competency frameworks. And now what we are doing is we are leveraging technology to assess people on these functional competency frameworks, which helps employees in terms of understanding their current level and what is that they need to grow to the next level. So this is another area. Third is, of course, on managing and navigating through behavioral challenges. So like Mr. Javed also mentioned that through online bite-sized learning programs, gamification, each employee based on their learning needs, they have to prepare a 70-20-10 plan and then upload this online on a learning system. So just to give you an example, let's say ex-employee has an area on presentation skills, has to work on improving the presentation skills. After taking through some micro-learning programs and after taking through the course, the classroom program, which is virtual now, they have to upload how they are presenting, and that's how it goes to their manager, and which is very real-time basis, and manager gives the feedback, and that's how the needle improvement is shown on the system. So this is another area. And then of course which we are currently still exploring on how to enable our employees in terms of using the big data, analyzing sales analytics, looking at various reports, and how do we analyze. So there's continuous intervention which is going on right now on building their sales capability skills. So these are few things I would say we are working right now on addressing some of the employee issues that we are facing.
Awesome. And I'll any which ways, because time is of essence right now. I may not, I would have loved to understand and double click on many of the nice best practices that you have. So I'll connect with you offline to understand more.
Sure.
So the next one, and I was very, very curious to learn more about the application of AI in learning in the real terms. And with that, I would ask Manjeet to double click on what he has been implementing at IIFL. How are you leveraging the power of AI with a little bit more specificity in your domain? So Manjeet.
Sure, thanks, Indrani. I think I will take it in two levels. One is what's the input that has gone into in the AI space. That's typically why, and what is the output that we are currently measuring through AI. Okay. So what we did really during the pandemic and the phase of pandemic, like I said, is to look at really building the inputs or looking at how do we take AI to the next level or leverage AI there. And then today, what we are really looking at is how are we reimagining AI and using AI outputs. So from an input perspective, there are a few areas that we are really leveraging AI on. One is our learning experience platform. So thankfully, when we really migrated from an LMS, which is more, I would say, admin-driven process, to an LXP, which is an employee and experience-driven process. That's wherein the power of AI really started or kicked off. And when I say the power of AI, it started with we given the choice for the learner to really define their learning objectives and learning goals, or the skills that they really would want to bring on board or explore. And once the people who registered or got into the learning experience platform identify their skills, the machine would really use these skills to curate content from the web. So that's kind of helping the content or the person to really bring on content which is outside the scope of a custom driven content that the L&D team makes. And the learner really had the choice to either go with curated content from the web, or be looked at, or be looking at a content which is custom curated by the L&D team. So giving the power to the learner to really decide on setting his skill sets that are required, letting his learning goals to be decided, and then letting the machine to really leverage the data and bringing content from outside the ecosystem or multiple ecosystems together. That's really the power of AI that we leveraged on as an input. That's one. The second area, again, in the LXP platform, which we really brought in AI, is to look at what are your peers really learning. What is of interest for your peers, and that's wherein the AI also played its role in terms of bringing out the trending, the most viewed content, the most consumed content, the most liked content, the most shared content, all of it to the learner. And that really created a system or an engagement which is more social, wherein people tried understand, or people got exposed to what's really happening around them. And the learner was never a silo. It was more of collaborative social learning. And the power of social learning was leveraged through AI, wherein we brought in those data points more visible to a larger audience, saying that, hey, look, your business, they are more interested in learning about design thinking. Did you even access the course on design thinking? That created that learner curiosity. So like I said, everything was more leveraged on, more focused on how do you build learner curiosity, and AI really helped us build that piece pretty well. Uh, the third area wherein we used AI and power of AI was to look at data that AI threw us in terms of what kind of content is being consumed by our learners. Is it video-based content? Is it podcast? Or is it media content? Or is it text and PDFs? And to the extent of what are the kind of sources that the user learner is going and visiting for consuming content, because we gave him the choice to really go and explore the outside world of content and bring in a lot of custom curated content through the power of AI. So we also had a lot of data which really gave us insights into what kind of content is being used and what kind of roles, what kind of people. And there we could also figure out there are a set of people who really don't consume AI content at all, or they really do not resonate with the kind of AI content that gets built. So what is the resonance of the learner to that particular kind of content that we are able to bring in through this system? And those are the 3-4 areas wherein we leveraged AI and the power of AI from a learning experience platform perspective. The second area that we looked at was workplace. So we are integrated. So we have Facebook at Work, or the workplace as a channel in our organization, wherein we have deployed bots. And what typically these bots do is engage with the learner. And typically this is more, so workplace is being used more as a employee engagement platform, wherein employees really engage, contribute, and learn together, share best practices, share their unique implementations, etc. What the bot really does is nudge the user there again, basis the contributions that they bring into the platform. So if a person brings in more content, the bot really nudges the person to bring in more content, or it rather nudges the user saying that, hey, look, there is a content that's available. Have you accessed it? And whenever there is a policy process that gets rolled out in workplace, because we typically use workplace as a medium for a large level employee communications, and whenever there is a process or a policy or a communication or a chairman's message that gets released, what this bot also does is try and relate relevant and specific content to that messages and then bring on board that and highlight that content. So if there is a policy which got released and there is a content which is related to that, which lies in my learning experience platform, which is outside the ecosystem, it really connects both and tries to bring in that content also into this platform workplace, so that there is more integrated approach to learning there. So the person really, so that's what we typically call as learning in the flow of work. So learner really doesn't need to go outside the scope of work to really access content,
Right.
and it also provides a right nudge. Third is an employee engagement tool that we call it as Amber, which we typically employ for employee feedback. And that typically plays its role by curating, or rather custom tuning the content, the questions to the learner responses. So typically we have a feedback process which has a structured set of questions that goes to the audience at a regular interval, and that be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years in system, 3 years in system, etc. And there are the set of questions. And depending on the learner response to those questions and the mood of the learner at that point in time, the bot is really capable to change the kind of questions that it would really pose in. So it's not a standard set of questions that goes to the audience. It's really mood sensitive questions, I would say. Power of AI also comes in there, wherein you really look at the learner or the audience exchange of information, and then really custom tune and adapt your questions to get more insights. The fourth area I would say is, and this is an area which we are currently working on, which is in terms of building the communication skills and the engagement skills of our call center agents. Typically, what happens is, so they are people who are front-end customer-facing roles, and they really have to be very empathetic, very resilient, and all of it when they are actually engaging with customers. And typically, we have been finding it very hard to really measure the output of their conversations or quality of their conversations. What we typically have in organizations, we have a service quality team who would look at and monitor recorded calls and do a manual evaluation process. We thought there are a lot of chances of biases getting into when we do a manual evaluation process, and why not give this to the power of the machine to really do that. And that's something that we are currently doing, wherein we are actually engaging or bringing in systems within dialers or within our Zoho emails, which would really capture the response that a caller is giving either through voice or through emails, and then validate and calibrate that against standard responses that should have ideally gone. So that gives a measure of an unbiased, a standard measure of their output and the performance, which is again backed by the power of AI. Uh, and last but not least, we use it also for candidate profiling, wherein we use artificial intelligence to look at the suitability of profiles to specific roles. And typically during the interview process, and especially when it's a virtual interview process, we really do virtual interviews, and the system is capable to really identify body languages, some set of words that the person uses, the kind of extroversion that is required for a role, and kind of introversion that is required for roles, and all of it. And I think that's how we have been really looking at leveraging the power of AI from an input perspective. And
Wow.
quickly to sum it up, from an output perspective, the current focus is really looking at the data outputs of AI. So AI throws out a lot of data. How are we really going to leverage the data output to make it more asynchronous, or rather synchronous to business impact measures? That's something which we are currently working on. We have done some work, but at a very early stage.
But really, really insightful. I'm sure people will learn here. And it reminds me of the recent study, I think in March 2020, Microsoft released an AI and skilling survey, and which actually reported that companies leading in AI are also leading in skilling, because they invest in deploying that AI for skilling. And as a company deploys more AI and skilling initiative, a learning culture emerges, right? So simply put, AI plus skills plus culture is a vicious circle, which will warrant success not only for the individual but for the organization, because organization is an amalgamation of all employees put together. So thanks, Manjeet. I am really, really impressed with all the good work that IFL is doing, and which you are obviously orchestrating. Very, very nice, very impressive. And with that, I'll go to the final question of this panel. We are still in time. So the question is for Swapnil. Swapnil, I do think that there are a lot of audience who are solution providers, may not be only into L&D within an organization, but what would be your recommendation if you had to share the voice of the customer for the solution providers who provides L&D solution for people like us? So any tips, what would you want them to keep in mind so that it has win-win outcome for you as a customer, for them as a supplier, and for the end audience who are going to be the actual consumers of that solution?
Yeah, thanks, Indrani. I think it's a very tricky question. You're asking me to spill the beans and share the tricks of the trade. Yeah, but nonetheless, I can share a few insights. And both from I representing an organization which is humongous in size, as well as coming from an industry background of retail. So if you look at the consumer perspective in general, over the years, since the coming in of the Flipkarts and the Snapdeals and the Amazons, the consumer behavior has become very amoebic, at the smallest level. And I would second that. I, as a consumer, will have a very amoebic approach towards what I want as a solution, because I have become very agile in a VUCA environment, which requires me to adapt and be flexible, and to modify my requirements and strategies at a short notice. I would honestly be very amoebic. So one of the expectations that I have from service providers at large, when we look at AI based solutions, is agility. You cannot be very adamant into certain techniques or processes that you have, or certain things that as solutions you can provide for a limited set of time. So one part is agility, definitely. Second thing, if you look at AI as a whole, and we're talking of technology. Obviously, technology is not God sent; it is created by humans. So I'll give you a small anecdote. I was working. I started my career with an organization called Bose, which was, it's an American MNC. And 20 years back, believe me, 20 years back, they had a software in their home theater systems, which was intuitive enough to understand and learn your likes and dislikes, your tastes, and then play music for you based on that. 20 years back. So we're not talking of technology today, right? So what I intend to convey is, 2 points. One is AI is majorly about intuitiveness. Few of the points that Manjeet also said, picking up the user, tracking the user and picking up what the user is looking at more, or the address coming from the top management, picking keywords and correlating it. But definitely also understanding that if a person is, for example, into an HR role, mapping the nuances of HR into the industry versus what the person has more inclination to in the specific domain of HR is also very critical. So I think one of the technology requirements would be this, in terms of intuitiveness. The other part related to technology is, having a first mover advantage. I remember working with the telecom and telecom product industry for quite some time, and we heard of something called as a Corning Gorilla Glass onto your mobile phone. Yeah, we were grounded, and we were floored, and we were like amazed that how can you have a glass which is not breakable, and you fall, it falls from the top of a building, but it just gets scratches and nothing like that. And then I did a little bit of research, and I was shocked. This technology existed 50 years back. And how? The first man-sent mission to moon, and in fact all the consequent man-sent missions to moon, the glass on the spacecraft was actually made of the same Gorilla Glass. Yeah, so it was quite surprising that technology reached the common user quite late. But now things are changing. You look at something like an Android, what they did by disrupting the market. They gave an open source software to users and they gave developer options. You play around with whatever you want. There will be a boundary definitely to it because it has to match the hardware requirements, but you play around whatever you want. So, the question now is not what technology you get to the users, but the important question is who gets the technology first to the users. Yeah, and that is where it can be a game changer for service providers. Uh, Another part that I haven't seen much into, AI driven softwares and, L&D aids or tools, so to say, is, there's a concept of something called as storytelling, which is picking up big time into the L&D domain, especially into the training part of it. And if you look at the history of storytelling, it goes way back, even before the medieval periods. Let's say in the Indian context, the Vedic times, and all the mythological events that we read today, they're all stories. And why were they created? Because neurologically, as per neuroscience, which they discovered today, so to say, stories create the biggest impact on the human mind, leaving the highest recall value. Now, if you're looking at engaging and simultaneously creating a learning curve for your employees, ensuring that they just don't take up a course online and clear the assessment, but they also have a recall to it. It's very important if you can have a software around storytelling which will be multilingual and which will also kind of get the message conveyed to the last man standing. Yeah, I'm talking on something which is on similar lines to something called as Audible, which is there right now, or there's another app on your mobile called Storytel, right? So that typically narrates your existing books in the form of stories. But if you can have something which can really engage the people and keep them glued to whatever 2 minute, 5 minute capsule, or a 2 hour module of learning, I think that would really click with the with your customers who you want to kind of do business with. One last point that I think I need to add here is giving you an example of something that I uh, said in the previous panel discussion. And there was one line which I said that you need to guide technology to guide you better. Taking a simple example of something like Google Maps, which all of us use. And it kind of shows us different routes. And if you go to the settings and play around with it, it will show you the traffic updates. Based on that, it will show you the fastest possible route. So if you look at the methodology over there, it's as simple that the user decides where, when, and how he wants to reach. And then the machine or the software intuitively bases the various data points suggests which is the easiest or the smartest way of reaching that. So if I'm thinking maybe 10 years down the line, but yeah, if I am let's say if I am a cluster manager in retail today and managing a particular cluster for sales, and I aspire to become a regional manager, that career mapping can be very clearly guided by AI in the coming years. And if something can be developed around that, I think both not just L&D but HR people will also benefit a lot from it.
So thank you,
Yeah.
Swapnil.
Thank you, Indrani.
Thank you so much. And as solution providers, I'm sure you're hearing the best practices from multiple customers, potential prospective customers. It's time to democratize the learning and the L&D best practices across community, right? Because what's working for retail may be something some component of it may be also relevant somewhere else, like, so just make sure that you can deploy, challenge the assumptions of any person, any customer that you are. We want you to be the architects, you to be the consultants for L&D, to know what's lying ahead, what's the innovations that's coming up, because we do not boast that we know all the solution. So you're working with multiple customers, you will have best practices across customers. Educate us. And with that, I know we are, I think, a few minutes over time, or it was supposed to end at 1:15. I'm at 1:14. So Ekta, over to you to close this. And if any questions to the panelists, I saw that it was there in the chat window and we were trying to answer. But if there are any unanswered questions, you could perhaps write them in the chat and we'll close them post the event also. So with that, Ekta, back to you.
Thank you so much, Indrani, for moderating the panel so well. And thank you all the panel speakers for sharing your insights with real examples. And definitely it has been an interesting session with insights coming in from everybody's end. So we are open with the question, though I've seen our panel speakers and Indrani have answered to a lot of questions on the chat box. So we are still open to take 1 or 2 questions. If anybody can raise their hands and put your questions, or even if you need to share your insights, that's also welcome. So we'll wait for a minute, Indrani, to people to understand. Yeah.
Hi, this is Sharmishta here.
Yes,
Yeah, so I'm very keen to, understand the last point that we were talking about, and maybe linked questions. So one is the power of storytelling in digital content creation, because everyone talked about micro learning. So has any one of you implemented that, the storytelling and how it has helped you? That is my key question, and for the group. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Indrani, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Manjeet. I was just parking the question with Swapnil because he brought it, but Manjeet, please go ahead.
Yeah. So, Sharmishta, what we have done is, from a storytelling perspective, typically we deploy content in the form of videos. And what we have done from a storytelling perspective is capture the life of an RM. And especially this we have done for an induction purpose. We capture the life of an RM from his day of joining till he achieves a certain milestone in business. The entire journey was beautifully captured in the form of a video which was live shot with the media houses, and the journey really talked about the story of how a person joins an organization and how he grows, and what are the things which are positives and negatives and hardships that he would face to really reach his milestone of achieving a desired goal. And that really resonated well with the people who joined the organization, because they could really feel and foresee their journey, whether that be of hardships and realities of life or the business world. That's one experience that I had, which we could really leverage storytelling as a process to live learning.
Very nice. And what was the impact that you saw?
So typically, so while we did not really measure it from an attrition or any other metrics that we use, but what we really, when we connected back with audience, what we really saw is they understood the role very well, and the time to market was very quick, because they knew what is expected, how is it that they should do, and what are the challenges that they would really face, and they could really see that happening right in front of them. So that resonance and that connection to that reality happened very quick. So the time to market and the acceptance of the reality really we could get as a feedback from participants.
Okay, and linked to that, if anyone, thank you so much, Manjeet. And linked to that, any one of you have tried AR, VR to the immersion that Manjeet is talking about, or thinking about it along with storytelling? Maybe we can have an added perspective. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think just to quickly add to what Manjeet said, if you look at the audience behaviors today, people who are young are not really seeking directions, they are seeking sensitization. And I think storytelling is one of the best way to sensitize people around that. When it comes to using AR or VR, we have incorporated the VR methodology. So what we've done is we have clubbed VR with edutainment and a little bit of storytelling to create and roll out an induction pack for everyone who joins new in our system. So it's more machine-led than human-led. Definitely, there are human interventions wherever there is a dialogue which is required or a two-way communication. But yeah, we have kind of seen good traction on that. We are measuring it through an NPS, which is kind of an indicative score, but it does give you a good insight into what majority of the crowd is feeling, and it also gives you certain areas where you can do better.
To add to what Manjit has said on the storytelling, what Sharmishra we have done was we have created, because all of us have grown up with comics strip type of short stories. So with that we created learning stories, with just giving you, like in any story you have a lesson at the end or the moral at the end, just one concept you take, and with little bit of humor and entertainment, it makes a lot of sense. So we have not shot with actual people, we used a semi-realistic animations instead of that, and that way we have given the story, and that's conveys the concept clarity, gives to the learner. So that's how we have done.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharmishta, for a question. We have one more question coming in from Mr. Palab Mitra. So over to you, Mr. Palab, to ask a question to the panel.
Hi, and good afternoon to all of you. Thank you, Brain Analytics, not so much of a tongue twister actually, for putting all of these wonderful views forward. You see, I am actually coming in from a very, very different perspective, right? So I am representing, if I may, the supply side to corporates, in the new world. So I am a chief learning officer for IMED Global School, and we are essentially trying to go after this new animal that we are all having to tackle with. It's called data, and by the time we know it, there'll be 25 billion things sending in data with three attributes: large volumes, tremendous variation, and ferocious velocity. Okay, that is essentially how this new data lake is going to look like. In that, to stay relevant, I think what is going to be most important, because all of you, I'm sure, would be reading, global corporates have democratized, and that data democracy, which Indrani was talking about, has happened and is here to stay. So 40% of the jobs in the coming years will require reskilling, upskilling, and lateral filling, where the new workforce will need to know digital, they will need to know social, they will need to know data science, they will need to understand IoT and AI, right? So I remember when I was putting the entire IoT and AI platform for Bharti Airtel, one thing that I would always refer to is machine learning is very similar to what IoT is today, with a little difference. When a child goes and touches a candle for the first time, he burns his fingers, right? So actuator and an immediate action is that the child removes his hand, which is machine learning. When the child looks at that candle, the next time he will not touch it. That's IoT for you. That's artificial intelligence. So essentially, what I feel the need of the hour is going to be when people like us work with folks like you to essentially ensure that the workplace has workforce which is ready for this new revolution. The black swan in the form of the pandemic is something that we'll all be able to ride very, very successfully. And every 100 years, such black swans happen, right? And that's when we have to co-create and collaborate to enable businesses to move forward. Thank you. These are just my views, and thank you so much to the entire panel for such interesting insights. It was a pleasure being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have a question from Mr. Sushil Pradhan. So, Mr. Sushil, please put your question.
Yeah, hi. Thank you. Wonderful panelists and really great insights. Just a quick question to whoever would like to answer, and this I put in the chat box earlier. So there is a lot of L&D transfer happening to frontline workers and to frontline staff, junior staff on handheld devices because of its ubiquity and its outreach. How effective is this in translation to learning? We've heard a lot of views, but sometimes, a big screen cannot be easily replicated on a small screen. That is what I've came to understand from some people that I interacted with. What are the panelists' views on this, and what can be done to enhance the experience?
Yeah, so Sushil, hi, Swapnil here. If I may just throw in some of my views and leave it open to the other panelists. You rightly pointed out, and I would say you hit the nail by the hammer. If you look at the millennials and Gen Y and Gen Z, all these people who are the tech savvy guys with the mobile phones in their hand, uh, their behavior completely contradicts what Shakespeare once said. And as I quote him, a picture speaks 1,000 words, is what he had said. Unfortunately, with the mobile devices having so many pictures coming in, the recall is absolutely so less, and the value addition, both in terms of either in terms of entertainment or in terms of education, has is considerably low on a mobile device. I would completely agree with you. And what's a probable solution in to look at right now, as I have previously said as well. Listening is something which people enjoy through any device. Be it face to face or how we are doing it right now. I would probably forget Javed's face or Manjeet's face after some time, but I'll definitely remember their words because it's gone into both of my ears. Something like a storytelling through mobile devices would definitely work. As you say, the audio cast or the podcast, a lot of content around voice that would definitely work.
So my point of view here is, I think learners, it is about the learner. Some learners may want to use the mobile devices, some learners may want to use the big screen. It's about having the same format, multifaceted content delivery. Let the learners choose which format is applicable to them. We also think, like, maybe I'll give away my age, but at one point in time, multiplexes and big screens were something which we used to really enjoy, going and watching the movie in a big screen. But then now we are on our mobile phones, looking at Netflix on our phones. So it all depends. Our taste depend. We change ourselves. So whatever works.
Thank you for both the answers. I think very
In my view, I think there are two things. One is that we started with we learn either by necessity or by curiosity. Now, when it comes to mobile phones, I may spend a number of hours for watching a web series or Instagram or Facebook, because that is my choice and my way of getting entertained. When it comes to learning, we always face people keep saying that these millennials are tech savvy and Gen Z and all. They may be tech savvy, but when it's come to learning on mobile, the question remains whether they will learn over mobile or the screen is a still difficult question to answer, because all of us have seen it. Yeah, I may be spending because that's my choice to watch something or to have been online because of whatever XYZ reason. But when it comes to learning, we all of us struggle, whether millennial or the baby boomers both have the similar struggle. So, and as we all know, the basics is key. Some are kinesthetic, some are good at learn listeners, and some are good at watching things. So I think good blend of all this and creating a kind of curiosity at the same time necessity would definitely help, irrespective of the device that you give them.
Yeah, I think the ultimate solution to this would be a matrix like immersive environment where you actually walk through a virtual setup of whatever it is. Thanks everyone for the great answers. Appreciate.
Yes. Thank you, Sushil, for your question. So, do we have any more questions, or we can move on to the closing note?
let's move on.
Yes, yes. I think we are done with the questions and yeah. So before we conclude on final thoughts, we all are well aware how AI is powerful when it is used well. Realizing its potential will define the L&D of the future, and which is why all the L&D professionals need to develop a better understanding of how AI can work with training. And on closing note, I would like to thank all our thought leaders. Though Mr. Atul Suri has left, thanking him again in his absence for the inspiring session. Indrani for wonderfully moderating the panel, and all the panel speakers, Megha, Swapnil, Mr. Kothari, and Mr. Javed for sharing your great insights and adding value. We had lovely questions coming in from the audience, which was answered. So I know that all the audiences have definitely enjoyed because we have got a lot of feedback on the chat itself. Also, my team had shared, we have shared the feedback form with you. So I would request all the audiences to please share your feedback with us because, it really matters to us. What are the concerns? How was the webinar? Any loopholes that we can look into, so that we can improve with every stage we move on for the various webinars. So thank you, everyone. Have a nice weekend. We would be updating our video on the YouTube, and we'll be shortly sharing the link with all the speakers and all the audiences. So you can go and look back and hear it out from a thought leaders again. Kindly follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for webinar and various updates on various topics. Thank you once again. Have a nice weekend. Stay safe, everyone.
Thanks, Ekta.
Yes, bye.
Thank you,
Thank you
panelists.
so much,
Thank you,
everyone.
Thanks,
Ekta.
everyone.
Indrani,
Thank you so much.
Javed, Megha, thanks.